So good morning and welcome to Scenariotech's thought leadership discussion on 3 strategies to reduce costs and risk while migrating to cloud financial software. We're proud to introduce our presenters for today, Kimberly Ellison-Taylor of Oracle and Lavanya Sallagundla of Scenariotech. Kimberly Ellison-Taylor is a transformational leader with a compelling background in strategy, finance, people leadership, digital engagement, business development, and technology. Kimberly has held leadership roles with Oracle, Motorola, KPMG, Prince George's County Government, and the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. In her current role with Oracle, Kimberly serves as Executive Director of Finance Thought Leadership to promote financial transformation and digital strategies in organizations of all sizes. Lavanya Sallagundla is a leader of quality engineering and works with enterprise customers in establishing digital and cloud quality assurance programs. She brings more than 15 years of experience in quality engineering and test automation, supporting customers who are going through their cloud journeys during implementation and post-implementation. Before we begin with the presentation, one note of housekeeping. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have during the presentation in the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll address those during the question and answer portion of the discussion today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Lavanya and Kimberly.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. And if we can go to the very next slide. What I want to do is just provide some level setting on what I've seen in my travels pre-COVID, of course, and in my discussions with leaders and also finance professionals. We have been talking about the pace of change for quite some time. And I would say that in talking about the pace of change, really what we were talking about was how do we ensure that we remain relevant, that our businesses and organizations are continuing to meet our clients, customers, and business partner expectations? How do we avoid some of those very high profile disruptive cases that we've heard about? We've been talking for at least the last few years about needing to look around corners, about the need to advance our responsiveness to change. And in order to do that, we've been talking about what there is. Well, in today's environment, if we weren't well positioned with those strategies and discussions, we're probably a little behind. And I say that because there are a number of trends that we've had leaders inside our organizations tracking for quite some time. And so depending on the industry that you're in, you are well aware of the regulatory environment. And with the number of things on the horizon, initiatives and changes that we can expect, I don't think any of us are thinking that the amount of regulations are going to be decreasing. So certainly we are thinking about that, and it's the top of any win room discussion that you're having, along with the financial challenges that we were experiencing. We were experiencing those before, I would say, the accelerants that we have today, the accelerants of why this discussion is so necessary. And they're unfortunately catastrophic events for many, and in some cases, they haven't necessarily led us in a great mind space for what's happening around natural disasters, around what's happening with recession, and also the pandemic environment. So when we were talking about financial challenges worldwide, we weren't even thinking, I would say for most of us, about those 3 things that are accelerating the notions of why we need to consider cloud technology. And so when we start thinking about the demographics in our environments, regardless of where you are in the world, I'm sure you have noticed that there's a big difference in some cases between those of us who did not grow up with technology and those of us who are native cloud technology users. And so in some ways, I think that's what's pushing and fueling these evolving and ever-changing expectations, because our customers and clients and business partners are in a generation, in many cases, where they know what's possible. And once they know what's possible, they in turn look at us, finance leaders, wondering, okay, so when are we going to catch up? And it's great news if you've already done that. The other thing that we've seen that technology certainly has fueled would be consumer empowerment. And when we talk about consumer empowerment, we're talking about it from a standpoint of your customers and clients can fact check you in real time. So when we start talking about moving to an environment where there's access using multiple devices, multiple times a day, an omni-channel experience, not a digital experience that's just online, a fully threaded omni-channel experience where the foundation is with connected processes. That's what your clients, customers, and business partners are expecting. All the way around to where we're talking about things that are happening in your supply chain and in the corporate partnerships that you might have all around the world, where we start talking about the geopolitical instability. Having a foundation that is resilient and allows you to operate no matter the issue, the challenge, I think is going to be the difference in organizations that are here and in organizations that do not survive the next 3 to 5 years. So as we look at the next slide, we start thinking about the increasing role of the finance organization. It used to be, and certainly when I was coming up in my career, that finance and accounting leaders were expected to maintain cost controls, to maintain risk and also assess risk and prepare the organization for risk mitigation. And also at the same time to make sure that the financial reports got out on time and that you were meeting Wall Street projections or whatever finance projections that you were putting out there. It's a good time to consider if the pandemic has impacted your transformation roadmap. And so let's just think about the poll that we have on the slide in front of us. This would be a great opportunity for you to give us some feedback on where you are in your journey. But even as we consider what this means, this expanded role of finance, we now see on this list at least more things that are now on your plate than ever before. So now we've added looking for new market opportunities and looking for ways to not just how do you counter disruption, but how are you going to drive disruption? Because that's certainly a great position to be in, where you're not just reacting to what's happening around you. The other thing that we're now seeing on the Finance Leaders Dashboard is technology. I can't tell you how many finance leaders will say to me, well, Kimberly, that's why we have the technology organization. That is why you have the technology organization, but the best collaboration, coordination, and cooperation between finance and technology is one where the finance organization is an invested stakeholder and you are actively helping by rolling up your sleeves and using the bird's eye view you have of the organization to help drive and initiate change, leveraging technologies. And so definitely we're seeing extreme automation be a part of those discussions. And hopefully the finance team is sitting at the table arm in arm with the CIO and also the transformation team. Now, we've known that the finance organization has long been powered by data, but how painful is it to get that data? Are we talking about weeks? Are we talking about months? Or if you're leveraging emerging technologies that we're going to be talking about today, could take you only a couple of days and ultimately could be just a click of a button to get the insights that you need to help influence decisions as the organization decides which way to go going forward. And then, of course, we're starting now to talk more about inclusive leadership and talent. And although the finance organization has always had the most amazing and brilliant minds, we're starting to see, based on some of those demographic trends that we've noticed before, that our colleagues want to be involved in different areas of the business than they may have wanted to be before. While reports can be exciting, the insights that they provide, I think what our clients and customers are telling us is that we may need to restructure to be more inclusive in how we go to market and in the services and goods and products that we provide. So that's driving a sea change, I think, hopefully, in how we're organized. And then, of course, business models. In most cases, how you were going to market 2 years ago, even last year, may not be the most appropriate strategy for you going forward. And although we're talking about areas that finance may not be 100% comfortable about, it's absolutely necessary as we go forward in this environment where we have the natural disasters, where we have a recession, and where we also are in a pandemic environment. Next slide, please. So here are just a few of my favorite Peter Drucker quotes. And I'm sure everyone has their own quotes as well that they like to use, but here are some that just are top of mind for me. The relevant question is not simply what shall we do tomorrow, but rather what shall we do today in order to get ready for tomorrow. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It is to act with yesterday's logic. And then finally, the best way to predict your future is to create it. And I could not agree more. I stand at the intersection of finance and technology. That gives me an opportunity to speak with finance leaders, but also to speak with my technology colleagues about how we can better prepare the business, to better prepare the organization to drive year over year double-digit growth. I understand that finance may not have always seen themselves as co-pilots of the organization, but we absolutely are critical to the discussions, critical to where the organization is going next, and critical to any plan for recovery. Next slide. So we're going to be talking about 3 strategies to reduce cost and risk. And the reason that this is important is because we know that cloud technologies are a lot more mature than many people may think. And in using analogies to win people along, I've been talking about this and using some examples that are overly simplistic, but I think they get the point. Especially when I say something like, well, I'm pretty sure your Gmail mail server isn't sitting under your desk for all of us who use Gmail. So we've already been using the cloud. We've been banking in the cloud. And I know that there are some people who would just prefer to be able to walk down the hall and see their data center and see those servers. But in today's environment, where on as little as 1 day or a couple of hours notice, we had to pick up our operations and move to being completely 100% virtual, I think we will find that those of us who were operating in a cloud environment were that much more prepared in order to move the organization forward. So I'm going to talk about some of those things that I've heard over and over again on hesitancies, questions, concerns on the risk of moving to the cloud, and also, very importantly, the cost as well. So let's talk about remembering the why. We're going to talk about motivating the team. And then, of course, we're going to talk about selecting the Oracle Cloud solution. Next slide. So as we talk about remember the why, yes, I do understand that we're not in a position to do things just because it's cool, or just because someone else did it, or just because it's the newest headline. We in finance are a little more pragmatic than that. We are looking for the return on investment, the why business case, and what does it mean for the bottom line. I 100% get that. But I will also share with you that this is a slide that talks about capabilities and functionality that exist today. These are not areas where people are dreaming it up or thinking that, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if we just stay where we are? Maybe that's a good strategy. In most cases, that's not going to be a good approach. And so when we start talking about continuous close, imagine if you could close your books faster, and what data insights and how faster you could get to providing that kind of insights that would impact how you are imagining the business and the key discussions or decisions that your organization would be making. Now, let's also talk about real-time visibility, being virtually connected, and also being data-driven just in general. Those are the new rules for a resilient finance organization as well as operations. And I would say when we're talking about the why, the business case is about why it's important to you, why it's important to your business, what capabilities and new functionality you will be able to drive if you were able to perform the functions that are listed on this slide. And so the economy stopped for a little bit of time. I don't know if that's going to happen again. We have an opportunity now to reinvent ourselves and to think about who we would want to be. Where does the organization need to be? We talk a lot about skating to where the puck is going to be. And now we have that opportunity leveraging cloud solutions, Oracle Cloud, but we also have an opportunity to bring more people along on the journey. And as we talk about the next slide, it's also important to think about the benefits, and that's part of the why. The operational excellence, the digital intelligence, the business influence. Oracle sponsored research that was done by the American Institute of CPAs and also the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. And in the research, we spoke with 700 leaders across 14 countries about their leverage and use of technology. And so they all pointed to 3 key agility factors based on operational excellence, digital intelligence, and business influence. And these are capabilities that, one, allow the foundation to build on for acquisition and growth type opportunities. It allows for more accuracy, better risk controls. It allows for more resilience and understanding of where your cash management posture is, what are you doing with acquisition, funding potentially, you're raising capital. And then also looking at digital intelligence. And that's going to be really important because if you're using disparate systems across a number of different facets, it takes that much longer to reconcile the data to get to a source of truth that everyone can believe in and everyone can buy in. How many organizations are leveraging and running their business off of spreadsheets completely? Now, in my ideal world, and I can certainly tell you at Oracle, we have a number of ways to leverage the spreadsheets that you use, but we also have capabilities that would eliminate the need to use them at all. Now, I know that's a dream world because I know my finance colleagues rely on using spreadsheets, and that's exactly why Oracle has the capability to integrate those into our solutions and systems. But at the same time, running your complete business, and I can't tell you, how many times I've heard about the Bob system. What is the Bob system? The Bob system is a pivot table spreadsheet that one of the colleagues that you had named Bob, who's not even there anymore, set up to run the business. That is not going to be a resilient proof opportunity. And that certainly wasn't helpful during the pandemic where you had to grab everything and run to your virtual operations. But when we talk about digital intelligence, it's leveraging what you may, with permission, of course, we have privacy and all of those guidelines. So with permission, leveraging the insights you have in order to be a better business partner and also a better partner with your customers. And then of course, you'll drive better influence. Next slide. So now we need to talk about motivating the team. And so as we talk about motivating the team, next slide, we're talking about bringing everyone along. Because one of the, from everything I've read and what I understand and talking to people, one of the deterrents or people, I'd say concerns that people have about moving to a cloud-based environment would be, what's in it for me? What's happening to my job? What does that mean? So when we go to the next slide, we talk about those. Let's talk about inclusion, bringing everyone to the table. Bring everyone along. Let's reimagine my role. If my role is impacted, what does that mean for opportunities or things that I can do in the future? How often are we communicating about the change on as many channels as possible, talking about in very specific terms, providing opportunities for training, and also having this reimagined journey where people would really honestly say, if I wasn't spending all of this time waiting for data, if I wasn't spending all this time doing manual reconciliations and looking at exceptions, I would do what? That's the kind of discussion that we need to have to get the team excited, to talk about the new capabilities and functionality for them. A lot of times we talk about new capabilities and what the firm or the organization is going to benefit from. Let's talk about it in people terms, and that's how we motivate the team. Next slide. So the third area to reduce cost and risk is around selecting the best technology. And so that's why I'm going to talk a little bit about selecting Oracle Cloud Solutions. And so when you look at the capabilities that Oracle offers to the marketplace, we are talking about a comprehensive offering that is unparalleled. And so connected processes will drive greater operational excellence, enable digital intelligence, and foster more business partnering. And because we have such traction in the marketplace from an analyst rankings perspective, also from the customers that increasingly every day are choosing Oracle Cloud, we know a lot about what we should do to manage this great relationship with new functionality and enhancements. And we're also learning more about what it is you expect and what you want. And that kind of partner is the right partner that I would suggest in technology that you would want to have. Next slide. The other thing that you might want to consider to reduce the cost of the risk of moving to financial cloud software is certainly the type of technology partner that invests in R&D year over year, not resting on laurels, not saying we have it. Oracle's been here from the beginning. And so I think it's critical for our customers to understand that we don't take it lightly, that we have 49,000 and plus developers, 18,000 patents, 7,000 customers. And then of course, when you go over to the 25,000 partners that we have and work with on implementing Oracle solutions, I would say that would go a long way to reducing the fear of cost and fear of risk and moving to the new environment. And that's why I want to talk about Scenariotech and the relationship that Oracle has with this great partner, who we stand arm in arm on over 400 different customer implementations working together. Scenariotech is a platinum partner, a Cloud Velocity partner in 2018. I think what you're going to hear next from Lavanya is just a snapshot of the capabilities that they bring to the market and what the things that they do, lessons learned that they have, the learnings and leading practices that are implemented in the methodologies and the way that Scenariotech goes to market. And I am so delighted to co-present with Lavanya. And so Lavanya, I'm going to turn it right over to you. And then I know at the end we'll have time for some questions.
Thanks, Kimberly. That was great discussion. So before I start, could I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
So you've mentioned Oracle has conducted a research in this space of customers undergoing the cloud journey, right? So would you mind providing some more insights on that research that Oracle has conducted?
Absolutely. So Lavanya, in 2017, we actually conducted the first research partnership with the AICPA and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. And in that research, we were asking them about their use of technologies. And we wanted to get a better idea of where finance organizations were on their transformation journey. And in that 2017 research, most people weren't really even thinking about it. They knew it was out there, but they weren't too sure. And I would say for many organizations, they were in a wait and see mode. And so fast forward to 2019, where we came out with Agile Finance Unleashed, we had more organizations actually thinking about it and showing some moderate movement. But what we also noticed is that between the clients and customers who were way out in front, who were already leveraging technology as a part of their competitive strategy, that the gap between them and what we called in the research non-agile organizations or non-agile leaders, that gap was increasing. And I would dare say that we had no idea that the pandemic would happen, But what we've seen, and it only stands to reason if you look at the research, is that those organizations that were out front with cloud, using AI and machine learning, that were already thinking about robotics process automation, they are a lot farther ahead, and they are way down this path of recovery in some instances, if the market allows, of course. And then they are leveraging a lot of what they've learned in order to increase their competitive advantage. And so technology does provide a competitive advantage. And we have examples of customers who actually use various aspects of our solutions, and they just showcase the results that they were able to achieve. So great research, and I would encourage everyone to go out and take a look at it. And it's certainly available on oracle.com, or you can just put into your search engine, Agile Finance Unleashed.
Thank you, Kimberly. One last question. You touched upon people, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, because I think we both agree that it's an important aspect of it. So how do you get people to buy in to go through this change, right? Because change is difficult, and to drive this kind of a change, what do you recommend leaders do apart from the things that you talked about already?
That is a very good question too, because in my estimation, I spend a lot of time talking about finance. I spend some time talking about technology. And so for me, I learned early on that people are the difference, because we all know that we have colleagues who have more knowledge about the actual workings of the organization. They can tell you everything about the financial close and consolidation process. They can tell you everything about what happens when an acquisition is acquired, all the way through to retirement, or when the expense report comes in to reimbursement. And so we have to honor that knowledge, and we have to honor that if they've been doing that role and they've been helping the business and organization, that we need to try to bring them along on the journey. And that means putting them on teams, understanding what they see from their vantage point. Yes, we absolutely need to bring in different talents that we might need, consultants to come in and help us. But I am a huge fan of using the team that's on the ground, leveraging their wisdom and insight, and also being very upfront with the impacts that could happen. It's absolutely true that there could be an impact and we could have our team members displaced. But if we are proactive enough, I think we could reimagine new roles, new opportunities, and new places that they would be able to leverage more of their skill sets and business knowledge. But because we put it off, Lavanya, because it's uncomfortable, no one wants to talk about someone being displaced, we wait until the end. We haven't included them completely in the discussion. We could be missing something critical. And then we have an environment where the morale isn't great. Let's make this an evangelistic initiative where everyone is excited, everyone knows where there is, everyone feels like they have a role, everyone's getting opportunities for training and stretch assignments so that they feel like they're not being left. And I think when you have that kind of work together kind of plan, change management, organizational design plan, it's a lot easier to accept transformation. And I would really like to see more and more of using the people that are inside the organization and bringing them along on the journey.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let me talk about, continue the discussion that Kimberly is having, but from a different vantage point. So I'm going to talk from, the implementation and the journeys that customers are taking, but still the three main areas are common, right? Like remembering why you're doing this, preparing the team to make this happen, and selecting the right partner, technology partner, to be able to do this, right? So we'll continue the theme, but we'll talk from a different vantage point, right? So remembering the why, right? So as I think we're all living through a new phase, right? So business and IT priorities in this new post-pandemic world have changed slightly in the sense that certain things have accelerated that people have planned for 2 to 5 years have gotten accelerated to being done in months, right? To get ready for this new completely virtual world. And there's also, with this economic situation, the business and IT leaders are figuring out how do you flatten the curve so that you don't have to go through a complete recession and then come back up into your growth pattern in the new normal, right? So how do you kind of shorten that so that you can accelerate the journey and become more resilient and become a future enterprise, right? If you look at it, all these things are always opportunities to plan for it better than what you come up with, right? So what are the few areas that you should be thinking about, right, from a priority standpoint in this new world? One is cost optimization. Obviously, we need to conserve cost, but how do you do that, right? So you've got different ways of doing asset rationalization, optimization, leveraging automation as much as possible, looking more from a pay-as-you-go kind of models versus making some long-term commitments to 3 years, 5 years, things that you can't imagine currently, that you could use, right? So focus on savings is one important thing most of the CXOs are currently working on, right? The second one is how do you adapt to this complete market uncertainty, right? A lot of CIOs are now saying that there's one thing that is certain is the uncertainty, right? Because that's the world we're living in. So how do you look at something where you don't have to make commitments for the next 3 to 5 year horizon? How do you handle this uncertainty effectively, and how do you adopt technology without having to make this long-term commitment? How do you become agile organization by doing this, right? So that's the second key thing that a lot of CXO, CIOs and CFOs and others are thinking about. The last but not least is you need to look at when you're doing these transformations, you need to think about outcome-driven transformations, right? You have to choose the right partners. In the whole paradigm of a vendor versus a software provider, how they deal with customers is completely getting disrupted now, because customers are looking for working with partners who've got skin in the game, who are not just selling them something and then leaving, right? For customer to figure out how to become successful in this whole transformation journey, right? They're looking for partners like Oracle or Scenariotech who actually have skin in the game, where it's more outcome driven, so that the success is guaranteed for both parties, right? It's not a single journey. So how do you choose partners like that, where you have the right attitude towards the success of the whole transformation journey you're taking, so that it's more outcome driven versus just selling you something and leaving, right? So those are three main areas we are seeing customers prioritizing in this new world. So the next key part is, how do you prepare the team, right? So how do you make sure that the teams that are coming into this whole new cloud discussions, because if you start talking about cloud and transforming the culture towards agile and all, there are a few areas that keep coming up, right? One is the skills challenge. Do you have the right skills in the team, or how do you get the team to adopt to these new skills that are needed? A complete cultural shift, right? When you are in on-prem systems, there's a lot of things that are controlled by the organization. But then when you move to cloud, there's so many benefits you get from cloud, but then it's still a mindset shift that people have to go through when they move to that. In terms of technology, it's a new technology. There's a lot of people who have been working on the old systems for 30, 40 years. They know the systems in and out. They're so comfortable with it. But when you say, hey, it's a new system, it's great, it's much more simpler, you get to do a lot of new things, it's still a challenge in terms of moving them through that. How do you make sure that they understand the new features and things like that, right? So these are some of the things that you do need to think about from when you're preparing the team. And if you plan for it from the get-go, you're going to be extremely successful. But planning is going to be important, right? And when you're planning, it's not just what technology to pick up, what vendor to or partner to pick up, but it's also how do you prepare your team to be ready for it. So let's talk about some of the benefits and new responsibilities that you would be ending up with when you take this cloud journey, right? Because cloud provides you continuous innovation and continuous delivery, right? So it's kind of a great thing. But then, so from a benefit standpoint, since you're on the cloud, your partner like Oracle is continuously providing innovative features for you, right? Whether it's chatbots, whether it's RPA, any new technology that is coming in, you're getting it in real time, right? Because somebody else is kind of pushing these things through. So you have faster delivery of new features and enhancements. You have predictable timeline and schedule, right? Whenever these changes are coming, you know exactly when they're coming, right? Because, you know, you have a published schedule. You're completely reducing the operational overhead, you know, because it's all, you know, taken care of by the partner. Your fixes are coming in much faster than it used to when you were on-prem systems, right? So there's a lot of great benefits. And cloud is the stepping stone for your digital transformation, right? Because that's one area you got to get in to be able to become an agile organization that you would want to become, the future organization that you want to become. But with this comes new responsibilities as well, right? The new responsibilities would be you need to be able to keep up with this change, right? Because, you know, if you don't plan for it, again, you know, it's great you're on the cloud, but if you don't plan for it, then it comes with, you know, its own challenges, right? So planning for it, evaluating what is new and adopting it, right? So we talk to customers who have moved to cloud, but then they're so focused on just keeping the lights on even on the cloud that they're missing out on a lot of these innovative features that are getting pushed so frequently, right? So over a period of time, then it becomes like you're not really taking advantage of cloud, right? So how do you plan so that, you know, you're actually taking advantage of all the new features that are coming in that are getting pushed by your cloud partner? And having the ability to make sure that since the changes are coming in frequently, you need to be in a position to ensure that everything that needs to continue to work is continuing to work, right? So thinking about not just implementation, but post-implementation maintenance as well, right? So how do you make sure that after you go live, you're continuously taking advantage of the cloud, right? It's not you implement cloud and you're done with it, right? Because that's the benefit of being on the cloud. So how do you make sure that, you know, when things are coming in fast, things are still continuing to work, right? So that's where continuously doing some automation testing and things like that would become valuable for you. So how does automation help in accelerating your adoption to cloud applications, right? If you plan from the beginning, automation is one area that could help you increase the velocity, both during implementation. You could actually do your implementations much faster if you incorporate automation into a complete plan. It will also help you increase the velocity of adopting new features when you actually implement cloud and you're in post implementation phase. It will provide you a lot of agility in adopting to change, and there's a lot of predictability, right? Because if it's automated, then you don't have to worry. You could just run the automation to make sure that everything is continuing to work, right? When changes are coming frequently, you can't, you know, expect your team to continuously sit and do testing versus do their day-to-day jobs, right? Because they have other things to do, you know. So if you have automation in place, it's very predictable. You don't have to worry that anything is going to break when things are getting released. So that's a good quality, as well as user confidence, right? If your users, if things are changing frequently and if certain things stop working, then the users' confidence in using the new applications are going to go down, right? So having automation in place will make sure that users are actually, that whole change we talked about, the change will happen much smoother, and they will start liking the move to cloud because they have a lot more confidence in how things are working. And last but not the least, costs. With automation in place, you're going to save a lot of costs because your total cost of ownership is going to go down with automation in place because you have to consider not just implementation, but post-implementation, ongoing support and things like that, right? So automation will help lower costs as well on an ongoing basis. So now let's talk about why select CloudTestr by Scenariotech, right? So I'll give you a few updates as to what CloudTestr is. So CloudTestr is an intelligent test automation platform that supports all different types of applications, all different SaaS applications that you have, whether it's ERP cloud, if you want to move your HR systems to cloud, or, you know, EPM, supply chain. So it kind of enables automation for all applications that you have. Plus, not just SaaS, but even if you have any on-prem systems, if you're going in not big bang, but if you're, you know, moving your financial systems first and then other systems later, you have the ability to automate the whole integrations between the systems, the whole end-to-end processes testing, whether it's mobile application, if you want to test a mobile, or any integrations, right? So it's a single platform that enables automation across your functional regression testing, end-to-end testing, performance testing, any security testing, in terms of if there are any security breakdowns that are happening, right? And we provide this as an automated testing as a service. So it's a platform as a service kind of a model, where though you have access to the platform to look at the dashboards, download the results, download the documentation, use it for audit support, but we help you with the whole automation, maintenance, and execution part of it, both during implementation as well as post-implementation. We have a lot of customers now leveraging automation during implementation because it kind of helps accelerate the implementation process, minimize any risks, unanticipated risks that you might have, that you might not have planned for and requires you to do additional cycles of testing. With automation in place, I'll give you an example. We had a customer who planned for 2 cycles of UAT when they were implementing it. And after UAT 1, they realized that there are certain things they wanted to add into their implementation. And because of that, they had to add 1 whole cycle of UAT into it. Since we have already automated their UAT test cases, we were able to complete the testing within 5 business days. Imagine running 800 tests by your business users for 1 whole cycle. It would have added 3-4 weeks additional to your implementation cycle, right? So things like that that are unplanned for, which are going to happen, right, when you're running a project, right? So things like that can be avoided both during implementation and post-implementation by leveraging automation. So what are the benefits of leveraging CloudTestr that we have seen customers have both during implementation and ongoing support? One is you have faster validation. You can actually have 4 times faster release validation with 1/5 cost of manual effort. You can adopt new features 2 times faster than if you do things manually. This is something that we actually looked at all our customers and realized that anybody who's using automation, they're able to adopt new features much faster, right? Automated impact analysis, where you have the automated change management. New features are coming in. How does it impact my implementation? What should I be testing? All that is automated, right? So you get a report, and then you can just figure out, okay, this is changing. Okay, these guys are taking care of it, right? And last but not least, auto health checks. So we ensure that we are continuously checking and monitoring your applications in terms of if there are any process slowdowns, any security breakdowns, is any functionality getting impacted, not just for the changes that you might be making or the changes that the third party might be pushing. So it could be anything, right? It's a software. So you want to ensure that your processes are working properly and you don't have any break in the system, right? And with all this, you could actually reduce the total cost of ownership by at least 30%, right? Because when you're thinking about this implementation, it's not just how much you're spending on implementation, the consultants, the team's time that is getting spent and all that, but you have to look at it from an overarching standpoint, right? The cost, post implementation as well. So with automation in place, you are able to reduce the cost of ownership by at least 30% that we have noticed with customers. So to wrap up, how do you make your journey seamless to the whole cloud, and how do you make sure that you have cloud quality assurance? So with CloudTestr, we are able to currently support almost 45 plus customers who are using actively CloudTestr for Oracle Cloud applications. Customers, large enterprise customers are using it, without any challenges, and about 55% cost savings that we have noticed on average, right? I've also seen customers whose savings go up to 75% as well, if you look at it. And 4 times faster automation, 30% reduction in your total cost of ownership, and 100% defect releases, right? So you don't have to hope and pray when release happens. You can go into releases with confidence because you have automation in place. You're making sure that everything which is supposed to work is continuing to work as expected, right? So we have guaranteed outcomes that we deliver to customers, and we have skin in the game to make sure that your applications are working as they are supposed to work, right? So to wrap it up, 3 main areas that we talked about today in terms of the 3 strategies for you to consider to reduce cost and risk while you are going through this journey. remember the why you're doing this. The second one is, don't forget the people. You have to motivate and prepare the team. And third is choosing the right technology partner, right? So Oracle and Scenariotech has been working with hundreds of customers in this space, and we've taken customers through this journey. And not only that, with this whole new situation, the new post-pandemic world we are living in, we are helping customers in this journey with more outcomes in focus versus just delivering the implementation, right? So we talked about CloudTestr today, but we also support customers through their implementation. Again, completely outcome-driven implementations with CloudTestr enabling the whole automation so that we can actually, one, implement it faster. We'll do it with skin in the game from our end, so that you'll only pay if we are successful in the implementation, right? So it's a win-win for all of us, right? And post-implementation support, right? So we'll ensure that not only you're implementing it successfully, but post-implementation you are able to seamlessly transition your team into this new world, and handhold them in making this successful, right? Because we want to make sure that your team adopts to it successfully and move into the new world, right? So we'll do that, and Oracle is a great partner. The Oracle applications, we're seeing lots of customers adopt Oracle Cloud applications, and you've seen the stats that Kimberly has shown. Most of our customers have been super happy using Oracle Cloud applications, right? So with that,
So Lavanya, that's always certainly good to hear. And I guess what I wanted to ask you before we go to any questions we might have is, what are some things in all of the implementations that you have successfully supported?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you think customers don't necessarily plan for in transitioning to the cloud?
That's a great question. So some of the things that we have seen customers needing to really think about and sometimes gets missed is the change management is one main area, right? Because when it comes to cloud, you are actually using somebody else's infrastructure. Like, it's Oracle's infrastructure, it's Oracle's release cycles, it's Oracle determining what fixes, what changes, what enhancements, what new features are coming when, right? Again, like I pointed out in my presentation, there are several benefits to it, right? So with you handing that over to a partner like Oracle, but then with that, which means that you have to plan for that change, right? Which means you need to make sure that when the changes are coming in. You need to plan to accept those changes in the stipulated time, and ensure that since there is no rollback option, right? Because it's not done for one customer, it's done for thousands of customers at the same time, right? So plan for it. Planning for the change management becomes one important aspect, right? Second one is, again, this continuous innovation and continuous delivery that is coming in. Great, right? I mean, it provides you a lot of new things much faster than it used to before. But then again, you need to plan for, the continuous delivery and continuous innovation, because if they're coming in much faster, right? The releases are coming in much faster, which means you need to have a team that can support those releases, plan for it, and make sure that, if you leverage something like automation from the beginning, then it would help you with taking advantage of the faster deliveries that are coming in. So it could either be a pain or it could be an advantage, right? So it can go both ways, right? So we've noticed that customers who plan for these two things effectively are able to enjoy the move to cloud, and are able to take advantage of all these exciting features that Oracle keeps pushing.
I think that's a great segue into one of the questions that I know we have, and it's about cultural mindset. And I will take the first part and see if you want to add anything else. And it basically says, it was mentioned there needs to be a shift in cultural mindset. Can you elaborate on what that means and what you've experienced with customers? I think that from my vantage point and what I've seen is that we have the demographic trends that we've probably all been paying close attention to. Just to give you an example, we have colleagues who think or thought if they didn't see their team members, they weren't working. And so many of you probably have worked in organizations that have a physical on-premise, everybody is there in the office, work culture. And that was really tough because we've had, at least in the last couple of years, more and more of our more younger colleagues, or maybe they're just getting out of college or life changes, whatever it was. We needed more flexibility for people to be able to thrive at work. But it wasn't happening because there were mindsets that said, we have a everyone comes into the office work ethic and that's what happens. And yet, COVID-19, I think, pushed our thinking 3 to 5 years forward in the advance. Necessity is the mother of invention. I think that's absolutely true, because what we have seen is that there are reports of people actually working too much from their home offices. It hasn't been that people haven't been working enough. And so that's definitely a cultural mindset that I think we're not going to go back. And so for all of us who've had the beautiful offices that were open space, I think that we'll leverage those, but to a less and less degree, because now that we understand that we can be productive with technology, I think we're going to see that more and more. And certainly cloud technology and Oracle solutions have been a large part of that for finance organizations around the world. And then the second part of that, I would say, is that we've had this environment where, from a finance leader perspective and finance professionals that I speak with, we like certainty. We don't necessarily like ambiguity at all. And so that's good news, but that's also bad news as it relates to being innovative and taking chances, because it's just not something that we've honed as a skill set. And I think in today's environment, the skill set that we all have to become more and more comfortable with is adaptability to change. And so we have been prepping and preparing for this scenario. You've been risk modeling, scenario modeling for this scenario. And then, but I think it ultimately comes back to how well positioned are you to adapt to an uncertain, unpredictable, chaotic environment? It's the skill of being resilient, the skill of reinvention, the skill of growing in different ways and looking at new business models. Because if we practice that skill, Lavanya, I think that skill will enable us to look at ERP in the cloud, look at using more of the capabilities across planning and budgeting, financial close and consolidation, looking at supply chain and human capital management. We would very easily embrace those in the cloud if we hone that skill set and cultural mind shift. And I don't know what else you would add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. And one other example is, when you're on the cloud, when the previous on-prem systems, there's heavy customization that has been done and all, right? But when you're moving to cloud, there's a lot that has already been streamlined, right? Almost 80% is going to be common that enables whatever you actually need to do for each of these processes that you have to perform, right? But if the team doesn't understand, what is it that is configurable versus what already comes out of the box, then they tend to kind of spend more time in doing things that probably are not going to add much value, right? So kind of, again, training them in, preparing them in how this, the whole cloud world looks like, how the applications are different from what you're used to, what are the things that, that you are changing, that you need to focus on, and things like that would help tremendously in terms of minimizing that anxiety about, moving to a new platform versus also making them feel more comfortable, right, as they move along that journey. So again, preparing, planning would tremendously help in this whole journey.
I think the other question, Lavanya, speaks about, did we see that customers who were using cloud solutions, were they better prepared to deal with the challenges presented by the pandemic? And I would say, if I just start first on this question, we have probably looked at our disaster recovery and business continuity plans praying that we would never have to use them. And that certainly is something I think all the companies have thought about. But now, as we've reignited the energy around looking at what those plans include, if you are in the cloud, and I don't have any statistics on this, I think we're still going to find out as we go through the pandemic and on the other side of the pandemic. But I would dare say, and I actually have a presentation where I showed like a messy closet where there are papers and files, and the meme would be, oh, Kimberly, go get your office. We all have to go back home to work. And then I would open that door of all those files, all those papers, and say, okay, I'll be there in 5 days. I'll be ready to go. When the stay-at-home orders were coming and they were like 1 or 2 days, you have to be ready to operate virtually. If you were in the cloud, you still may have had to pull a file folder or pull some things from your desk, but it certainly wouldn't be a closet full of papers that you dig through in order to get work done, and you were relying on someone's knowledge that has been there 30 years or 20 years because that's how you get work done. That's not really going to be helpful when we think about resilience and reinventing and looking at new business models. We have to be able to be agile and be, faster with responding to new market changes and new market opportunities. And so I will dare say that when we get through the pandemic, and I know we will, that we will get through it and start doing our debriefs and lessons learned on what we realized about our companies, what we realized about ourselves. And I think we'll realize that emerging technologies used appropriately and with the right partner like Oracle and Scenariotech, you have very, very significantly less fear of cost and fear of risk as you go through this process. And Lavanya, I want to turn it over to you so that you can have, the last words.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think even from our standpoint, we are seeing that, as I pointed out, the CIOs and CXOs are looking at one, cost optimization, but how do you do that, right? Doing it the right way. And we're seeing a lot of folks actually realizing that cloud is going to provide them one, savings, but also the agility that is needed to be able to adopt to this new change faster, right? And we've also noticed that our cloud customers have been able to adopt to these new changes much seamlessly, right? If you look at it, it's not just, you can access it from anywhere, you can access it from your phone, you can access it, so that has made it so easy to transition to work from home, right? Instead of, doing a lot of connectivities, VPN and all that, right? Issues that you had to deal with. And the other thing we also noticed is, a lot of customers are looking at automation now, right? Because, now I'm talking to so many more customers than I did before, because again, automation brings a lot of those savings, but it's doing it the right way, right? Because it's not just for now, but it's for the future as well, right? It enables you efficiencies in the right way, right? And last but not least, like you said, we're also talking to a lot of customers and enabling this, outcome-driven transformations with skin in the game from our side, self-funded transformation. So we're coming up with innovative models, right, that would help customers go through this transformation, right, instead of putting it off, right? So you can react in two ways. Either you can say, what, we're going to stop everything, we're going to wait till we pass through this, but we've been waiting for 6 months now, right? So, and we have seen other customers who are like, okay, let's go because we got to do this, right? So we're kind of seeing both sides, and we have some customers who've gone through that, and we're like, we sped up the implementations, they're up and running, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, we're seeing leaders react in multiple ways, but what we're trying to tell the leaders in this call is that, hey, this is the new world, and adopting to this change, keeping in mind few things that we talked about would be extremely helpful in going through this journey. So, Art, I think we went a little over, but
yeah, we're about there. We don't have any other questions. So I think we can go ahead and conclude the presentation. First, a huge thank you to Kimberly Ellison-Taylor for joining us today. Thank you, Kimberly. It was very insightful and very good information to share. Lavanya, thank you to you as well. we'd like to thank all the participants for attending, and we hope you guys found it helpful and informative. Please visit us at Scenariotech.com, where you can download a copy of the presentation or replay the webinar at your convenience. And thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.